everyone, welcome to the Support the Spectrum channel. If you are new here, my name is Ryann Sutera. I'm a neurodiversity affirming speech language pathologist and owner of Support the Spectrum. And today we're going to be clarifying all the claims made by our current administration, the Trump administration, about autism. Over the course of 2025, our current administration has made suggestions about an autism registry, a disease registry. They've made claims saying that autism is a disease. They're saying that it needs to be eradicated and cured. They're blaming now Tylenol on the cause, one of the environmental causes of autism, taking Tylenol in pregnancy. All the while, they are defunding research on autism. People who have spent their entire careers researching and studying environmental factors and genetic factors of autism have had their research cut. So we're going to dive into those things today, talk about the neurodiversity affirming angle. If you're interested in some clarification on those things, please keep on watching. I want to start off by noting that all claims and all peer-reviewed research on these topics will be available in the description below. So one of the first claims that we heard this year is that autism has to have a cure and it is an epidemic. And one of the ways they are going to track this epidemic is by having a autism registry. The United States Department of Health and Human Services and RFK Jr. have come forth and said that they want people who have diseases and or autistic people to upload the fact that they do and answer a bunch of questions into an online database. So obviously this is a little scary, I think, for anyone who is a history buff or cares about neurodivergent people. You would care about the vernacular being used, the verbiage being used, and you would care about the idea of tracking people with diseases. So first, let's just talk about the vernacular. Saying that autism is a disease is completely inaccurate. It is a neurotype. There are many different types of neurotypes that make up the beautiful biodiversity that we have in this world. We have neurodivergent and neurotypical as some umbrella terms. Within the neurodivergent community, we have sensory processing disorder, ADHD, OCD, autism, PTSD, and many, many other things. And none of these things are diseases. None of these things are acquired. They are typically seen to be within a person as they are born and all throughout their development. Obviously, RFK Jr. has insinuated and said that vaccines do cause autism, which means that would be an acquired environmental factor within like the first 2 years of life that could cause autism, is what he is saying. And yet, there are hundreds of studies with millions of participants that have found no link between vaccines and autism, not even a correlation. We'll talk about correlation and causation later, but not even a correlation between vaccines and autism. It is extremely unfounded and therefore dangerous for the head, the secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to say such a thing publicly and suggest a registry. Now, if you are a fan of history, or if you've ever even learned history, you know that it is nothing new for people to hold prejudices and create laws against people who differ from the average, right? One of those populations being disabled, diseased, and neurodivergent people. We know that keeping track of these people and having a big, huge eye over them can be extremely dangerous for multiple reasons. There are privacy concerns. There's a history of eugenic surveillance concerns. And, personally, I would not suggest anyone sign up for such a database if it were to come into fruition, because I do think that personal information could possibly be used against you, obviously not in a positive way. And to define autism as an epidemic is so inaccurate and so stigmatizing. If we look at two different charts, right, people will say, oh, the presence of autism has increased over time. That is very true. The presence of autism has increased over time and the prevalence. So has left left-handedness. If you look at the charts of left-handedness over time and autism over time, you will see that they both increase as time goes on, right? And that is because left-handedness used to be hidden, used to be seen as a bad thing. I think it's of Catholic origins to think of the left hand as evil. And so it was obviously suppressed, hidden, and people were trying to move away from people being left-handed. And then obviously as society has progressed and we realize, wow, that means absolutely nothing. People who are left-handed are able to live their lives without being scolded for using their left hand predominantly. And it's the same kind of things with autism plus many other factors. One, we are obviously way more accepting of autism. We have way more research to support autism and way more understanding of what autism is. We no longer, for the most part in America, this does happen around the world and America too, we very rarely hide these people, put them in institutions. We don't have things like the ugly laws, which if you are not aware of, there were laws set up in the 1800s, and I think the last one was abolished only in the 70s, only in the 1970s, where people who appeared different from the average were not allowed to be seen on the streets. If you are interested about that, I have a whole post on my TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere about the ugly laws. Really a conversation worth having that maybe I'll make a whole video on itself. So because we no longer have laws preventing autistic people from being in public, we no longer have the societal standards of hiding them away or sending them to institutions, because we have way more knowledge about autistic people and we have way better diagnosing criteria, we obviously see a higher prevalence of autistic people. That just happens when people get smarter and when we trust science. So it's not an epidemic because there is some environmental factor breeding this and increasing it. It's just an increase as we've become smarter. Even the word epidemic kind of implies that something needs to be fixed or eradicated, when really we're just in support and help for these communities. And I'm really sorry if I get emotional, because this is my life's work. I've completely committed myself to helping neurodivergent people, and it feels wild that people can come in and just say things that are so inaccurate and say things that are so clearly fear-based. And these people so clearly have not spent time with autistic people or disabled people, because if you did spend even more than a few hours, you would just get it. The need to support, lift up the voices of, and love this population. And also just include them in on these conversations. I mean, it's so clear that RFK Jr. and Trump, because they are using this kind of language, they have not brought in autistic people. They've not brought in neurodivergent people or disabled people into the conversation at all, or else they wouldn't say these things. So like I said, I'm trying to refrain from getting emotional, and I want to be as objective as possible with these things. Another reason why that is challenging is because, like me, other people have committed their lives to helping neurodivergent people and or researching autism, researching the genetic and environmental causes of autism, and furthering neurodiversity, affirming support for autism. And this administration has defunded so many programs. Just this year, they are estimating that around 20 to 30% of research funding has been cut. Just in 2025, I mean, that is a significant chunk. And having a platform of wanting to cure or find the causes to these things, and then defunding the research that's been done for decades, something's not adding up. That's another reason why it's hard not to get emotions into this, because it just feels like lying. It just feels like you are saying that you want to figure these things out, but you're taking the necessary resources away from the people who have been doing it for decades. Moving on to more recent claims. Recently, Trump and RFK Jr. came forward, had a press conference insinuating that acetaminophen or Tylenol being taken during pregnancy causes autism. Let's talk about that. So there is some research to suggest that there is a correlation between taking Tylenol during pregnancy and autism. What does this mean? This means that in studied populations of women, pregnant women taking Tylenol, they observed that those subsequent babies being born, how there was a bit of a correlation, a higher prevalence of those autistic individuals in those populations than in the control that did not take Tylenol. Okay, so yes, there was a correlation. Correlation does not mean causation. It does not mean that because of those very limited studies that for sure we know that Tylenol causes autism, right? It feels almost crazy to explain because I think anyone familiar with science knows that that's just not the case. I'll give you a very common example of how correlation is not causation. One that we hear, every scientist hears at some point in their life. Every summer, there is an increase of ice cream sales, and every summer, there's an increase of shark attacks. If you look at a chart of ice cream sales and shark attacks, you would see that there is a correlation, and they almost match completely in the way that they go up in summer and go down in winter. If you were to say that one thing causes the other, you would be saying that the increase of ice cream sales causes an increase of shark attacks. So no one should eat ice cream in the summer, right? Crazy claim. It doesn't make any sense. Yes, there is a correlation. They follow the same trend, but there's no evidence to support that one causes the other. So it's the same exact thing with this one study that found a correlation between Tylenol and pregnancy and autism. Yes, you saw the same type of movement on the graph, but there is no causation. There is nothing cementing the fact that Tylenol in pregnancy causes autism. So no matter what your opinions are on this administration, it is extremely irresponsible to come forward in front of the country and say that Tylenol in pregnancy causes autism. It is a way of shaming pregnant mothers as well, because pregnant mothers need to lower their fever. They need to help with their aches and pains, and Tylenol is one of the only anti-inflammatories you can take during pregnancy. So it just, I think it's just riling up fear in pregnant women without the need for that. Now, on the other hand, the administration did promote leucovorin, which is a type of folinic acid that promotes folate in the brain. This is used for people who have a lack of folate, might be folate deficient in the brain, and helps with the development of the brain, helps with learning, memory, and the growth of the brain, particularly in childhood. It's particularly helpful for people who have cerebral folate deficiency, which sometimes does coincide with autistic people. So they're promoting this folinic acid and saying that it could be a cure for autism. That is completely inaccurate. You will never change a neurotype. It's the way people are born. It is not a disease. Like we said, it's not a deficiency in things. You could have a deficiency on top of being autistic, but it's not going to change the course of someone's nervous system and give them a new brain. However, it has been shown to help developing brains with language development, language expression, and has helped sometimes even protect the brain from further stress that can really negate learning. So it is something that doctors are prescribing for individuals with folate deficiencies. Could be someone who is experiencing the neurotype of autism as well. Really roundabout way to say that. So it is, there is a study. It only had 48 participants. It did show some growth in language expression, but to say that it is a cure for autism is actually, and I'm not afraid to say this, is actually insane. There is not enough research. There is no cure for a neurotype. Just wild and so dangerous, because people are now going to go to their doctors, people who are taking care of autistic individuals, and say, we need this, and kind of push for it. And it really should not be given to anyone who does not have folate deficiency. So I think throughout talking about all these claims, I've made it clear how neurodiversity affirming support team members view all of these things, we view it as extremely dangerous and frankly unnecessary. And also, they're framing it as a way of needing to eliminate the people that we care about the most or change the cognition of the people that we care about the most. And all I have to say to that is, if you spend any bit of time with these populations, you will care so much more about helping them reach their goals for themselves rather than push any type of societal standard on them. Because frankly, it is abusive to push a neurotypical societal standard on someone who is disabled and or neurodivergent. They're not going to have the same expectations as the neurotypical world. And frankly, most of them don't care to have the same expectations as the neurotypical world because our world can be really mean. And in the case of the United States, it's very capitalist and it cares so much about productivity rather than enjoyment of life or authenticity even. It's just not everyone's goal. I don't think there's anything wrong with people who believe in the American dream and care about capitalism and care about contributing to a productive society. That is your right. It is also people's right who do not care about those things to exist and live their life without being worried that someone thinks that they need to be cured and pulling at straws about what that cure could even be. So that's the neurodiversity affirming vantage point of things. And also, if you're someone who cares even a little bit about science evidence proof, you'll clearly see that there's no science to support that vaccines cause autism, Tylenol during pregnancy causes autism, that autism is a disease when it is so clearly a neurotype. There is some research to suggest that glucocorticoid does help with brain development and language expression if someone is folate deficient. And it is so important to fund research, to fund good research that people have devoted their lives to doing. If this administration cared so much about supporting and helping these people, they would give the professionals their money back. I wanted to do my best to clear these things up. This is not just headlines. These are people's lives. These are people's purposes that they're messing with with these claims, these unfounded claims. There are real consequences, and we have to hold our leaders to those expectations, those higher expectations, ethical expectations, science-backed expectations, non-eugenic expectations. Like I said before, all claims, all research will be in the description of this video. If you know someone who needs this information, please send them this video. Thank you guys so much for being a support on this channel. I promise that no matter what happens in this world, it is my purpose and my ambition to get neurodiversity affirming values out into the world and not forget about our neurodivergent loved ones. So every like, subscribe, share, comment really means the world and helps this channel out. Thank you so much for trekking along, and I will see you guys in the next video.